Jordan Carter sat by the window of the shuttle as it glided through space. He wore a clean button-down shirt and kept his hands folded in his lap. Beside him, Emily Taylor held his hand tightly. She was smiling, but her grip was nervous. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked, looking at him. He gave her a calm smile. "I told you I've met tough crowds before." She laughed softly. "Yeah, but not my parents." The shuttle began its descent toward a large lunar estate. From above, it looked like a silver fortress built into the moon's rocky surface. Bright lights lined the landing pad, and beyond that, tall domes and glass towers rose like monuments. To wealth, Emily sighed. They don't understand people who aren't like them. "And what are they like?" Jordan asked, raising an eyebrow. "Old money," she said. "Powerful, proud, stuck in the past." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess it's up to me to bring them into the future." When the shuttle landed, the door opened with a soft hiss. Two servants in crisp uniforms stepped forward and greeted them. They took their bags and led them down a wide path toward the main building. Inside, the house was cold, both in temperature and in mood. Senator Alan Whitmore stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed. He was tall, with gray hair and sharp eyes. Beside him was his wife, Claire, dressed in elegant black. Nearby, Kyle Whitmore leaned against a wall, smirking. He was younger than Emily, maybe 22, with the same golden boy looks as his father. "Welcome," Senator Whitmore said, though his tone didn't match the word. "Thank you for having us," Jordan said politely, stepping forward and offering his hand. The senator shook it, but barely. "We wanted to meet the young man our daughter keeps talking about." Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, we were curious." Kyle walked over and clapped Jordan on the back too hard. "So you're the famous Jordan Carter, valedictorian from Mars? Impressive." "Thank you," Jordan said, evenly. "Must have been tough," Kyle went on, "being one of the few from your background to make it that far." Jordan smiled. "It wasn't easy, but I had good teachers." Emily shot her brother a look. "Stop it, Kyle." "What?" "I'm just saying it's cool. Must be nice to get special help." Jordan's smile didn't fade. "Actually, the only special thing was how high the standards were. I had to outthink everyone else just to stay ahead." There was a short silence. Alan cleared his throat. "Well, let's get settled. Dinner will be ready soon." They all moved to the sitting area. Jordan took a seat beside Emily, while the others spread out around the room. The decor was rich and formal, too much so. Everything felt staged. "So, Jordan," Claire began, sipping tea from a small cup, "what made you choose law?" "Because I believe in justice," he said simply. Alan gave a dry chuckle. "Justice, yes. Noble idea." "You don't agree?" Jordan asked. "Justice changes depending on who holds the power," Alan said. "Laws are tools, nothing more." "Then I guess the best lawyers know how to use them wisely," Jordan replied. Alan studied him for a moment. Then he smiled, not kindly, but like someone watching a chess move unfold. Dinner was served in a grand dining hall. The table stretched long with crystal glasses and polished silverware. Jordan sat across from Kyle next to Emily. The food arrived: roasted meat, fresh greens, warm bread. But the conversation was colder than the room. Alan cut into his steak. "Mars has gone downhill lately. Crime rates rising, schools failing. I hear even the top students struggle to keep up." Jordan took a bite before answering. "Actually, Mars University just ranked first in interplanetary legal studies. 3 of the top 5 graduates were from Earth colonies." Alan raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yes. And most of them came from underfunded schools. They had to work harder than anyone else." Alan smirked. "Sounds like you're defending affirmative action." Jordan put his fork down. "I'm just saying talent exists everywhere. Sometimes it just needs a chance." Kyle leaned forward. "But if standards drop, doesn't that hurt real merit?" Jordan turned to him calmly. "Do you know how many hours I spent studying? How many cases I rewrote until they were perfect? I didn't get where I am because someone handed me a degree." Emily looked at her family nervously. Can we please talk about something else? Alan waved a hand. No, let him speak. Jordan continued. I was on the student advisory board for the Martian constitutional reforms. I helped draft laws that now affect trade between 4 planets. If you think I got here by luck, feel free to check the public records. Silence fell again. Claire finally spoke. Well, that's very, ambitious. Jordan smiled. Thank you. After dinner, the guests dispersed. Jordan and Emily walked outside onto a balcony that overlooked the dark moonscape. You were amazing in there, she whispered. They weren't trying to be kind, he said. So why should I pretend to care? She hugged his arm. Just promise me you won't let them get to you. He looked at her. They already tried. I'm still standing. From inside the house, Kyle watched them from a distance. He turned to his father. This guy's trouble, he muttered. Alan nodded. Slowly. Maybe. Or maybe he's exactly what we need. Kyle frowned. What do you mean? Alan smiled. Let's see what he does tomorrow. Image description prompt for Leonardo AI. A futuristic luxury lunar estate at night, viewed from a balcony. The moon's surface is visible below, with stars filling the sky. 2 figures stand on the balcony, one male, wearing a simple button-down, shirt looking confident, the other female in a dress hugging his arm. Behind them, through large glass windows, a grand dining hall can be seen with wealthy guests still seated. In the distance, glowing domes and metallic structures shine under the starlight. The next morning, the sun rose over the moon's horizon, casting long shadows across the lunar estate. Inside, the house was quiet, except for the soft hum of climate controls and the occasional footstep on polished floors. Jordan Carter woke early. He got dressed in clean clothes and stepped out into the hallway. The place felt like a museum, cold, perfect, and lifeless. He wandered through the halls until he found the study. It was a large room lined with old books and digital screens built into the walls. There were legal documents, family portraits, and a large desk made of dark wood. As he looked around, a voice startled him. You're up early. He turned to see Margaret Whitmore, Emily's grandmother. She was tall and elegant with silver hair pulled back. Her eyes were sharp, like she could read people just by looking at them. I couldn't sleep, Jordan said politely. She walked, in slowly, hands folded. This house doesn't suit everyone, especially not someone like you. He smiled slightly. You mean someone who doesn't come from money? She chuckled. Something like that. But I've seen enough people to know when one has real strength. He gave her a curious look. And what kind of strength do I have? The kind that doesn't break under pressure, she said. Last night you handled my son and grandson well. Most people would have cracked. I didn't come here to fight, Jordan said. But I won't let anyone talk down to me, either. Margaret nodded. Good, because you might need that strength again soon. Just then Emily walked in. She looked surprised to see them together. What's going on? She asked. Her grandmother smiled, just getting to know your young man better. Emily came closer. You don't usually take interest in guests? Margaret sat down in a chair near the fireplace. Sometimes a guest is more than they seem. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Are you saying I'm more than I seem? She gave him a knowing smile. Perhaps. Tell me, Jordan, do you believe in challenges? He crossed his arms. Depends on what kind. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small tablet. She tapped the screen and a document appeared. It was titled, Whitmore Inheritance Clause. My late husband left behind a condition in his will, she explained. Whoever can solve a complex legal puzzle involving property rights across 3 planets will inherit control of the Whitmore spaceports. Emily gasped. That's impossible. No one even knows where all the files are. Margaret smirked. They're here, hidden in layers of legal code and forgotten treaties. It's a test, one that has never been passed. Jordan looked at the screen. Why are you showing this to me? Because, she said, you remind me of someone who once tried to change the system from within. Someone brave enough to stand up and smart enough to win. Emily looked nervous. Jordan, you don't have to do this. He met her gaze. Maybe not. But if it means proving who I am, then why not? Later that day, the whole family gathered in the living room. Alan Whitmore sat in his usual chair while Kyle lounged nearby, smirking. Heard you had a chat with Grandma, Kyle said. Hope she didn't fill your head with crazy ideas. Jordan sat down calmly. Actually, she told me about the inheritance clause. Alan's eyes narrowed. Did she now? Yes, Jordan said. And I'd like to accept the challenge. There was a stunned silence. Kyle laughed. You're serious? Very, Jordan replied. Alan leaned forward. Do you even understand what you're asking? That puzzle has stumped lawyers, judges, even politicians. Jordan shrugged. Then maybe it's time someone new took a shot. Claire finally spoke. This is absurd. You think you can solve something that's been unsolved for decades? Maybe not alone, Jordan admitted. But I know how to use tools. AI, databases, legal archives. I also know how to think outside the box. Alan studied him carefully. Then he smiled, not kindly, but like a man watching a game begin. Fine, he said. You want to play? Let's play. Over the next few hours, Jordan was given access to a private study filled with ancient legal records, digital files, and holographic displays of planetary laws. He started reading, taking notes, and connecting pieces like a detective solving a cold case. Emily stayed with him, helping where she could. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she just watched him work. You really think you can crack this? She asked. I already found 2 contradictions in the trade agreements between Europa and Titan, he said, tapping his tablet. Someone made sure these laws overlapped in confusing ways, probably so no one could claim the inheritance. So you're saying it was done on purpose? He nodded. To keep the power in one family, she frowned. My family. He looked at her. Not yours. Theirs. By dinner time, Jordan had mapped out a rough plan. He called for a meeting with the entire Whitmore family. They gathered in the same grand dining hall as before, but this time, the mood was different. There was tension in the air. Jordan stood at the end of the table with his tablet in hand. I've reviewed the legal puzzle, he announced, and I believe I've found the solution. Alan raised an eyebrow. Already? Jordan nodded. The problem isn't just about law, it's about interpretation. Someone twisted the rules to make it unsolvable. But if we go back to the original intent, the answer becomes clear. Kyle rolled his eyes. This sounds like nonsense. Jordan ignored him and tapped his screen. A hologram appeared above the table, showing maps of 3 planets and overlapping lines of law. Look here, Jordan said. The treaty between Ganymede and Callisto was written before Titan joined the Union. That created a loophole. If we apply the correct version of unified Terran law, ownership shifts. Alan leaned forward, studying the data. You're suggesting a reclassification based on historical precedents. Exactly, Jordan said. Which would transfer control of the spaceports to the rightful heir. Silence filled the room. Margaret broke it. Well, Alan, does he have a point? Alan looked at the data again, then at Jordan. He might. Kyle looked shocked. You can't be serious. Alan gave a slow nod. We'll review the findings further, but he may have something. Jordan smiled. Then I guess the game's just beginning. After the meeting, Jordan and Emily went back to the balcony. The stars shined brightly and the moonscape stretched endlessly below. You really did it, she whispered. Not yet, he said. But I showed them I belong here. She hugged him tightly. Thank you. For the first time since arriving, Jordan felt like he wasn't just a guest in their world. He was starting to shape it. Inside the house, Margaret watched them from a window. She smiled to herself. He's got fire, she murmured. The next day began with a flurry of activity. Jordan Carter spent hours locked in the study, reviewing every detail of the inheritance puzzle. He used advanced AI tools to cross-reference laws, treaties, and historical documents. Emily stayed by his side, offering moral support and occasionally fetching coffee or snacks. Meanwhile, the Whitmore family grew restless. Alan Whitmore paced in his office, muttering about unintended consequences. Claire sat stiffly in the living room, her face unreadable. Kyle lounged on a couch, scrolling through his tablet but clearly distracted. "This guy can't win," Kyle said aloud, though no one responded. "He's just some smart kid from Mars." Outside, the moon's landscape remained quiet and still. Inside, the tension crackled like electricity. Later that afternoon, Margaret Whitmore entered the study where Jordan was working. She carried a tray with tea and sandwiches. "You look like you could use a break," she said, setting it down. Jordan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "Thanks. I didn't realize how deep this goes." Margaret poured him a cup of tea. "My husband always loved puzzles. He thought they tested character. Or loyalty," Jordan added. "Whoever solves this inherits more than spaceports. They inherit power," she nodded. "Yes, and my son doesn't give up power easily." Emily spoke up. "Do you think he'll try to stop Jordan?" Margaret smiled faintly. "Alan likes to control things, but even he knows when to step aside if someone proves themselves." Jordan took a sip of tea. "Then I need to prove myself." As the evening approached, Jordan called another meeting. The entire family gathered once again in the dining hall. This time, however, the atmosphere felt heavier. Everyone knew what was at stake. Jordan stood at the head of the table holding his tablet. "I've reviewed everything," he began, "and I've found something critical." Alan leaned forward slightly. "Go on." The original treaty between Europa and Titan included a clause about shared ownership of trade routes, but when Ganymede joined later, the wording changed. Instead of sharing, the treaty shifted to prioritize whoever controlled the central hub, the Whitmore spaceports. Kyle interrupted. "So, that's been true for years." "Not exactly," Jordan continued, "because under unified Terran law, the central hub must serve all planets equally. If it doesn't, ownership defaults to the planet that contributes most resources." Alan frowned. "And which planet is that?" "Mars," Jordan replied. "Specifically colonies funded by Earth-based programs, meaning the spaceports belong to those who represent Mars." Claire gasped softly. "That's impossible." "It's not," Jordan said calmly. "I double-checked the numbers. Mars provides 60% of the raw materials used in interplanetary trade. Without us, the ports wouldn't exist." Alan stared at him, processing the information. "Even if you're right, proving it would take months, maybe years." "Not necessarily," Jordan countered. "I've already flagged the key sections of the treaties. If we present them to the Interplanetary Council, they'll rule in favor of Mars." There was silence as the weight of his words sank in. Margaret broke it. "Well, Alan, what do you say?" Alan looked conflicted. Finally, he sighed. "If what you say is true, then the law speaks for itself." Kyle slammed his fist on the table. "Are you serious? You're just going to hand over everything to him?" "No," Alan said firmly. "But neither will I ignore facts. The Whitmore name stands for justice, not greed." Jordan nodded respectfully. "Thank you." After the meeting ended, Jordan stepped outside onto the balcony. The moonscape stretched endlessly before him, bathed in pale light. Emily joined him moments later. "You did it," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. "Not yet," he replied. "But we're close." Inside the house, Kyle stormed into Alan's office. "Dad, you can't let him win." Alan sat behind, his desk looking tired. "It's not about winning, Kyle. It's about doing what's right." "Right?" Kyle snapped. "Since when do you care about that?" Alan gave him a sharp look. "I care about our legacy. If we fight this, we lose everything. Not just the spaceports, but our reputation." Kyle clenched his fists. "Fine, but don't expect me to roll over." As night fell, the household settled into an uneasy calm. Jordan returned to the study to finalize his findings. Emily stayed with him, quietly watching as he typed furiously. "What happens after this?" she asked. "Depends," he said. "If I succeed, I'll have control of the spaceports, but I'm not keeping them for myself." She raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I want to use them to help others," he explained. "Build schools, fund scholarships, create opportunities for people who need them." Her eyes softened. "That's amazing," he smiled. "It's why I started studying law in the first place, to make a difference." At the same time, Margaret Whitmore walked through the halls, lost in thought. She stopped outside the study and listened to Jordan's steady typing. A small smile played on her lips. "He's going to change everything," she murmured to herself. Back in the study, Jordan finished typing the last line of his proposal. He saved the document and leaned back, exhausted, but satisfied. "Done," he said. Emily hugged him tightly. "You're incredible." He laughed softly. "We'll see." Early the next morning, Jordan presented his final findings to the family. The meeting was brief but impactful. Alan acknowledged the validity of Jordan's argument and agreed to submit the case to the Interplanetary Council. As the shuttle prepared to leave the lunar estate, Jordan stepped onto the landing pad with Emily by his side. The Whitmore family stood nearby to see them off. Alan extended his hand. "Good luck, Jordan, you've earned it." Jordan shook his hand firmly. "Thank you." Margaret stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't forget us when you're running the galaxy," he smiled. "Never." As the shuttle lifted off, Jordan looked out the window at the shrinking estate below. Emily squeezed his hand. "What now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we build a better future." The Interplanetary Council convened on Europa, one of the busiest hubs in the solar system. Jordan Carter stood outside the grand hall, adjusting his suit. Emily was beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "You ready?" she asked. He nodded, though his heart raced. "As ready as I'll ever be." Inside the hall, representatives from every major planet and colony were seated around a massive circular table. Holographic screens displayed maps, treaties, and legal codes above their heads. Reporters crowded the edges of the room, eager to capture history in the making. Alan Whitmore sat among the delegates, representing Earth. He gave Jordan a brief nod as he entered the chamber. Margaret Whitmore watched from the gallery, her expression calm but curious. Jordan stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. "Honorable members," he began, "I'm here today to present evidence regarding the rightful ownership of the Whitmore spaceports." He tapped his tablet, and the hologram shifted to show the treaties he'd uncovered. These documents prove that Mars has contributed the majority of resources used in interplanetary trade. Under unified Terran law, this entitles Mars to control the central hub, the Whitmore spaceports. A delegate from Titan raised a hand. "If Mars gains control, what guarantees do we have that trade will continue fairly?" Jordan smiled. "My proposal includes reforms to ensure equal access for all planets. The spaceports won't belong to any single group, they'll serve everyone." Another delegate spoke up. "And who will oversee these reforms?" "Me," Jordan said confidently. "But not alone. I'll work with representatives from each planet to create a transparent system. No secrets, no loopholes." Murmurs spread through the room. Some delegates looked skeptical, while others seemed intrigued. Emily watched from the sidelines, pride shining in her eyes. Kyle, sitting nearby, scowled. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to Alan. "He thinks he can just walk in and take over?" Alan didn't respond. Instead, he studied Jordan carefully, impressed by his composure. Jordan continued, addressing the council. "For too long, power has been concentrated in the hands of Emily Wack of few. It's time to change that. Let's build a future where everyone has a voice." His words resonated with many in the room. Even the most stubborn delegates began nodding slowly. After hours of debate, the council reached a decision. They voted unanimously to transfer control of the spaceports to Jordan, under the condition that he implement his proposed reforms within 6 months. As the verdict was announced, cheers erupted from the crowd. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. Jordan stepped away from the podium, visibly relieved. Emily hugged him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he corrected. Later that day, Jordan met with the council's leadership team to discuss next steps. They outlined a timeline for implementing the reforms and assigned advisors to assist him. Meanwhile, back at the Whitmore estate, Alan called a family meeting. Claire, Kyle, and Margaret gathered in the living room. "Well," Alan began, "it seems we underestimated Jordan Carter." Kyle crossed his arms. "So what? Does this mean we lose everything?" "No," Alan said firmly. "It means we adapt. Jordan proved himself smarter and stronger than us. Now it's our job to support him, or at least stay out of his way." Margaret nodded approvingly. "He's going to shake things up, whether we like it or not." Claire sighed. "I suppose there's no stopping progress." Back on Europa, Jordan worked late into the night, drafting plans for the new system. Emily stayed with him, offering encouragement. "What's first on your list?" she asked. "Education," he replied without hesitation. "I want to use part of the profits from the spaceports to fund schools and scholarships, especially for underserved colonies." She smiled. "That's wonderful." "It's why I started this journey," he said. "To make a difference." Over the next few weeks, news of Jordan's victory spread across the solar system. People hailed him as a hero, someone who had challenged the status quo and won. On Mars, communities celebrated. Students dreamed of following in his footsteps. Leaders praised his vision and determination. But Jordan remained humble. During interviews, he always emphasized teamwork and gratitude. "I didn't do this alone," he told reporters. "People believed in me, supported me, and pushed me to be better. This isn't about one person, it's about all of us working together." As the reforms took shape, Jordan traveled between planets, meeting with local leaders and listening to their concerns. He made sure everyone had a say in shaping the future. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Jordan found himself standing on a balcony overlooking Europa's glittering cityscape. Emily joined him moments later. "Tired?" she asked. "Little," he admitted. "But it's worth it." She leaned against him. "You've changed so much already." "There's still more to do," he said, "but for the first time I feel like real change is possible." She kissed his cheek. "You're amazing, you know that." He chuckled. "Nah, I'm just doing my best." Inside the house, Margaret Whitmore watched footage of Jordan's speeches. On a screen, she smiled to herself. "He's going to change the galaxy," she murmured. "And I couldn't be prouder." 6 months had passed since Jordan Carter's victory at the Interplanetary Council. The reforms were now fully implemented, and the Whitmore spaceports operated under a new system, one that ensured fairness and transparency for all planets. Europa, celebrations erupted as news of the changes spread. Delegations from Mars, Titan, Callisto, and Ganymede gathered to mark the occasion. Banners hung across the city, declaring unity and progress. Jordan stood on a stage in the central plaza, addressing a massive crowd. Emily was by his side, smiling proudly. "Today," Jordan began, "we celebrate not just a change in ownership, but a shift in mindset. The spaceports no longer belong to one family or planet. They belong to everyone." Cheers erupted from the audience. People waved flags and chanted his name. "This is only the beginning," he continued. "With these resources, we can build schools, fund research, and create opportunities for those who need them most." He turned to gesture toward a group of students seated near the front. They represented colonies from across the solar system, places where education had once been scarce. "Starting today," he announced, "a portion of the profits will go directly into scholarships for young minds like these. Because the future isn't about wealth, it's about potential." The applause grew louder. Reporters captured every moment, broadcasting it live to millions. After the speech, Jordan stepped off the stage and walked through the crowd. People reached out to shake his hand or thank him. Children held up drawings of spaceships and planets, inspired by his story. Emily stayed close, her eyes shining with pride. "You've done so much already." "We've done it together," he corrected. "None of this would have happened without you." She hugged him tightly. "I'm glad I believed in you." Meanwhile, back at the Whitmore estate, Alan sat in his study watching the broadcast on a screen. Claire joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "He's remarkable," she admitted. "I didn't think anyone could pull this off." Alan nodded. "He proved us wrong. All of us." Margaret entered the room, leaning on her cane. "Remarkable indeed. He's given our family a chance to redefine itself." Kyle lounged nearby, still sulking. "Doesn't mean I have to like it." Margaret gave him a sharp look. "You don't have to like it. You just have to respect it." Kyle sighed but said nothing. Later that evening, Jordan attended a formal dinner hosted by the Interplanetary Council. Leaders from every major planet were present, eager to congratulate him. One delegate raised a glass. To Jordan Carter, a man who dared to challenge the status quo and succeeded. The room echoed with cheers. Jordan smiled humbly, raising his own glass. "Thank you," he said. "But let's remember, this isn't about me. It's about what we can achieve when we work together." As the night wore on, Jordan found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the challenges he'd faced, the doubts others had cast upon him, and how far he'd come. Emily noticed his quiet demeanor and leaned closer. "What are you thinking about?" "How different things feel now," he replied. "Back when we first arrived at your parents' house, I wasn't sure I belonged there. Now, I realize belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about making a place for yourself." She nodded. "And you've made quite a place." The next morning, Jordan traveled to Mars. He visited universities, meeting with professors and students. Everywhere he went, people greeted him warmly. At one university, he delivered a keynote speech to a packed auditorium. "When I graduated here," he said, "I never imagined I'd end up where I am today. But looking back, I see now that every challenge I faced prepared me for this moment." He paused, scanning the faces of the young audience. "Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong. If you believe in yourself and fight for what's right, you can change the world." The students erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. Afterward, Jordan took time to speak with individual students. He listened to their dreams and offered advice. Some asked about law school. Others wanted to know how to tackle injustice in their communities. One student approached timidly. "Mr. Carter, do you ever get scared?" Jordan smiled. "All the time. Fear is natural. But it's not about being fearless. It's about moving forward anyway." The student nodded, encouraged. As Jordan prepared to leave Mars, Emily stood beside him, gazing at the red horizon. "Where to next?" she asked. "Europa," he replied. "There's still work to be done." She smiled. "Then let's keep going." Back on Europa, Jordan returned to overseeing the spaceports. He worked closely with advisors, ensuring the reforms ran smoothly. Over time, trade between planets increased, benefiting everyone. Reporters often asked if he planned to run for political office. Each time he shook his head. "My role is to serve," he explained, "not to rule." His humility earned him even more respect. People admired his dedication to justice and equality. One evening, Jordan stood on the same balcony where he'd once dreamed of changing the galaxy. Emily joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Look how far we've come," she murmured. "Yes," he agreed, "but there's still farther to go." She looked up at him. "You'll never stop, will you?" He smiled. "Not until everyone has a fair shot." In the distance, stars twinkled against the dark sky. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of all the possibilities ahead. Inside the Whitmore estate, Margaret watched footage of Jordan's latest interview. She smiled to herself. "He's changed everything," she whispered, "and he's only just begun." The camera panned to show Jordan standing confidently, surrounded by supporters. His journey had started with doubt and ridicule, but it ended with triumph and hope. And as the galaxy looked to the future, they knew one thing for certain. Jordan Carter hadn't just shut down his critics, he'd opened doors for generations to come.